Welcome to Hungry Cat Games, an indie game studio. For quite some time I've had a game concept in my head and I feel the time is right to bring it to life. However, instead of creating this game on my own, I thought it would be fun to share the creation of the prototype in a devlog. But instead of just giving updates on what I've done, I'm going to show what I'm actually doing. Basically a tutorial. The concept and planning, graphic creation, animation, coding, sound, all of it. Follow along with this devtorial and you can create a game very similar to mine, or better yet, use this as an opportunity to make and shape your own game. So let's get started. In this session, Devtorial 0, I'm mostly going to discuss my vision for the game, what I want and don't want, and go over the tools and resources I'm planning to use. I've always enjoyed reading fantasy fiction, especially those that involve fey creatures, commonly known as fairies, sprites, pixies, etc. But it isn't just the creatures, but the lands they are from, their interactions or use of magic, etc. Of course, there will be some challenges too, but I'll touch on this in a moment. The working title is Chronicles of the Feywalkers, intended as a description of the use of Fey magic and their ability to use that magic to travel from area to area. Originally, I was thinking of writing a book series before transferring this concept into a game. However, within the game, Chronicles could apply in multiple different ways. Perhaps the player needs to find a book or series of books, or perhaps missing pages from some magical tome that's needed to accomplish a goal in the game. The game is intended to be an open world style game focusing on exploring, discovery, and magic use, very much in the cozy style. Having to fight an enemy should be a very rare event, and I'm leaning towards magic based capture or lift the evil spell over the enemy as opposed to actually harming them. Being open world, I don't want to force a linear experience, but rather allow the player to determine what they do and when or in what order. Primarily, expect the player to be questing, solving puzzles and problems, maybe a crafting option, and just simply discovering all the world has and what their role in it is. The question of third person view, where you follow along behind the character, or first person view, where you see as the character sees, has not been decided, although I'm leaning towards the third person view at the moment. I do have an idea which will involve actually playing both in first and third person depending on location and movement in the game, but I'll need to test it out and see if it works. I'd like the player to be able to customize their character's appearance from at least a limited number of options. When creating a game, there are a few different approaches that can be taken, especially at the indie level, and with a few or a single developer, myself, one consideration is game first or graphics first. Using a game first approach involves creating things like cubes and capsules to represent the player and everything else, and then putting in the time on working with the controls, general play, and all the other systems within the game. Once that is working, well, then real graphics are layered in, replacing those placeholders. Going with a graphics first approach involves creating many of the graphics early on. These then get incorporated into the game, and the controls, actions, and subsystems are created. This approach, to me, much more quickly feels like you're creating a game as you can see it materialize right before your eyes, pretty much from the very beginning. The downside is the possibility of substantial rework if the graphics no longer work within the other aspects of the game, although good programming practice and design should allow for graphics to be swapped out if necessary. Personally, I'm really motivated in seeing the game come to life with real graphics very early in the process, so I'm planning to use a hybrid type approach where I'll do a bit of coding, do some graphics, back to coding, and so on to help bring the game to life. There are so many other games out there that it's difficult to truly find a unique style. However, I don't just want to use some generic graphics or rip off another style, so I will be attempting to create my own graphics. We'll see how that goes. Since it's just me and not a department full of AAA artists, I'll want to keep it to something reasonable and with the added expectation that it will work on most common hardware, so the potential market is larger. Yes, I am considering a possible commercial release of the game, but that's way down the road. A fairly recent development in the game creation field is the use of AI. I want to create this game myself, so the use of AI will be very limited. For concept and prototype ideas, I feel it's already quite capable. For example, the logo character was designed completely by AI, simply by feeding in a few words describing what I wanted and then letting the AI system iterate through dozens of concepts in just a few minutes. I'll explore the use of AI in later videos for some very limited purposes, but I do have at least an idea or two where I think I might be able to utilize it. Developing a style starts with determining some appearance factors of the game. It's going to be 3D, that's a given. No side-scrolling or flat overhead maps. Fully immersive 3D is the only real option I see to bring my world to life. Within 2D or 3D, there are many styles that can be used: realistic, cartoons, low poly, pixel art, etc. And that just names a few of them. I plan to aim for low poly as a starting point, but also applying detail where I can. For example, trees will not be a brown stick with a few green blobs, rather actual trunks and branches with individual leaves will make up a tree. I have not yet decided on coloration. It could be solid colors or blends or textures. The characters won't be blocky, but aren't going to be fully realistic either. In general, accurate appearing, but not a super high detail level of realism. Now there is a list of things I want to avoid. In general, I'd like to keep the game family friendly, so no exaggerated physiques or other inappropriate dress. As a cozy family friendly concept, no blood, no gore, no swearing, and I don't plan on multiplayer, so there will be no concern with inappropriate usage by other people in chats or character names. Finally, while it will be low poly, I want to avoid the blocky style seen in games like Minecraft. So it will be a detailed low poly, and you'll see more about that as we get to the graphics. The tools I'm using will include the Godot game engine with coding in GScript, Blender, Affinity Photo, Audacity, OneNote, OBS, Resolve, LMMS, and a web browser. All except for Affinity are free or offer a free version. However, GIMP, a similar free program, could be substituted for Affinity Photo. Years back I started with Godot but found 3D performance lacking and switched to Unity for some time. With the recent changes Unity has imposed on developers and the way they went about it, I gave Godot another look. In the subsequent versions since I last used it, I was quite impressed with the performance gains and feel it now meets with my expectations. If you plan to follow along and create your own game, there are some assumptions that will be made. First, you should have a basic understanding of GScript, of Godot, perhaps a simple understanding of Blender. You don't need to be an expert in any of them, but at least have opened the applications at least once or twice and tried them out. The game creation and videos will be created on a laptop and a desktop. The laptop is a fairly average machine with a 3060 mobile GPU, and the desktop is a little higher end system, a little additional memory, and a 3080 GPU. However, my target is a more, shall we say, average level of hardware to be able to run the game. Now, if you decide to follow along with your own game, please keep in mind I'm going through the process of developing my prototype, and for the most part we'll be following through step by step, but it may not cover everything. For instance, I may model a tree or two, whereas in the prototype I might have a half dozen different trees. It is a prototype project, so it allows for me to test and make changes before incorporating them into my final game. Will that ever see the light of day? We'll see. I'll wrap up this video here and start it on development in the next video. The early videos will cover some graphic creation, a player camera controller, and a playing field where development and testing can take place. After that, I'll start to add in the various subsystems like magic, dialogues, inventory, and more. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.